Hi, welcome back to our TOEFL Speaking section video series. I'm Dennis with BestMyTest.com. Today's topic is Speaking Task 3, and I'm not going to lie, it's difficult. But don't worry, we got you covered. First, we're going to talk about the structure of Task 3, and then we're going to go through 2 example questions and answers together. And then I'm going to give you an answer template, followed by 2 high-quality sample answers, and also some useful expressions and how to take notes. That's really critical for this one. And then we'll finish up by going over the grading criteria. All right, so let's start with the structure. All right, speaking task 3. This is an integrated question. So that means you're going to have a reading and then an audio lecture from a professor. First up is the reading. You're going to have 50 seconds to read about 4 to 8 sentences. And that passage will cover an academic term, process, or idea. And the subject usually comes from biology or business or psychology, but not always. It can come from any college subject. Could come from ecology or sociology. After the reading, you're going to hear a lecture from a professor, maybe 1, maybe 2 minutes. And it's just a monologue, so he or she's just going to be talking. And in that lecture, the professor will explain the term you just talked about using examples. And sometimes it might even come from his or her personal life. So listen carefully. And then you're going to see the question. And the question is going to say something like this. Using the main points and examples, explain Clinal Variation. And then you're going to have 30 seconds to prep and 60 seconds to speak. All right, so now you understand the structure of TOEFL Speaking Task 3. Now let's go through an example together, an example question together. So remember, during the reading, you have 50 seconds to read and to take notes. And some students get overwhelmed. They take so many notes about all the little details. Big mistake. From the reading, you want to take away the main idea. One thing only. What is it about? What is the academic term, idea, or process? Usually in the passage, it's going to give you the definition. That's the main thing you want to take away from it. And when you listen to the lecture, then note-taking is more important. And we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so now let's read the passage together. 50 seconds. Let's go.
Read the passage from the textbook. You have 50 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now.
Okay, so we just read the passage. Before we go into the listening, let me show you my notes. As you can see, I literally just wrote down the definition of Clinal Variation. Remember, comprehension is much more important than note-taking, so focus on the main idea. In a minute, we're going to listen to the audio lecture. And when you're taking notes, focus on 3 things. Focus on the academic term, the transition words, and the examples. And the transition words, when you hear them, you can use it as a signal to know that the professor is moving on to the next point. He's moving from one place in the conversation to the next. Make sense? All right, let's listen to the lecture.
Listen to part of a lecture in an ecology class. Okay, now you understand that clinal variation is a gradual change in a feature across the distributional range of a species or population. Let's look at 2 examples from the textbook: sparrows in North America and elephants in India. Let's look at sparrows first. Because the body size of sparrows plays an important role in heat control, the sparrows in South America usually have smaller bodies than the sparrows in North America, as we know the climate is much hotter in the south. With a smaller body, the sparrows in South America can effectively reduce the heated area in their bodies, whereas the sparrows in North America need bigger bodies to conserve the heat and to adapt to cold weather. The exact same thing in a different way can be found in elephants. The elephants in India are different from those found in Africa, especially in the areas of their ears. The elephant uses the air to cool itself, as blood is pumped to the thin skin, which can then lose heat to the atmosphere quickly. That's why you see elephants flapping their ears virtually non-stop. It's hotter in most parts of Africa, and this is why the ear span of the African elephant is significantly larger than those of Indian elephants.
Okay, as you can see, the question is explain clinal variation and how the examples used by the professor illustrate this concept. Now this is a typical speaking task 3 question. You're asked to describe the academic term you read about using the examples given by the professor in the lecture. Now once you see the question, you've only got 30 seconds to prep. You need to use your time wisely. You need to be able to look at your notes quickly and organize your thoughts so that you can give the best answer possible. Now, before we get into the answer, let's take a look at my notes. All right, here are my notes. And the first thing that probably jumps out at you is that I'm using symbols. I'm using a minus sign to represent smaller, a plus sign to represent bigger, S to represent south, and N to represent north. You want to do this because you want to use your time as efficiently as possible. You don't have time for full sentences or even full vocabulary words. So I strongly encourage you to come up with your own symbols and practice writing them before you take the test. This skill will help you a lot, not just on this task, but also on the listening part of the TOEFL, as well as speaking task 4. So here's some useful note-taking symbols and how they can really help you. All right, now here's a table full of useful note-taking symbols that you can use for this type of task. I'll just go over a couple of them real quickly. So for example, you can use an equal sign to mean refers to or occurs. Or you can use an exclamation point to mean something's very important. So go ahead and pause the video and read carefully through each example to see how they can be used to shorten your note-taking. Try to use them as much as possible so that they become second nature. Trust me when I say it will make your life much easier. Okay, so now let's move on to the answer part of this video. All right, let's get into the speaking template. First, you can say something like, from the reading, X is described as, and here X is the term that you read about in the reading passage. And then you're going to say something to the effect of, the professor further illustrates, or the professor further demonstrates, or the professor further delves into X, the topic, by using 1 or 2 examples. Firstly, and then you talk about the first example. Secondly, and then the second example. And then if you've got time, you can say in summary, and then you give a concluding sentence. Okay, let's put this template to use and answer a sample question. From the reading, clinal variation is defined as 2 species gradually developing differently because of environmental factors. The professor further illustrates this subject by giving 2 examples. First of all, the professor explains that sparrows of North and South America are different sizes. And they develop this way because of different climates that they live in. In South America, the weather's constantly hot, so the birds need to cool off. And because of that, they're smaller in size, and this small size enables them to cool off much better. In North America, the sparrows are larger, and this helps insulate their body against the colder weather. Secondly, the professor compares elephants in Africa to elephants in India. The ear size of an African elephant is much larger than that of an Indian elephant. And this is again due to heat. The bigger surface area of the larger ear allows more air to pass by it, which allows more heat to be lost. So both the sparrows and the elephants are great examples of clinal variation. All right, I hope you're not finding this task to be too difficult. If you're having some trouble, don't worry, that's normal. It's a tough task, but keep practicing and you can get it. Let's look at another example now. Let's look at a topic from psychology, at a question from psychology, which is a common topic on speaking task 3. So let's look at this together. We're going to put the reading up. You'll have 50 seconds to read it. Remember to take notes on the main idea. Here we go.
Read the passage from the textbook. You have 50 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Listen to part of a lecture in an economics class.
Okay, let's take a couple of real-life examples of this. One is that people often have an irrational desire to use bad products, which they've purchased to get their money's worth. Another is that people often continue to follow a bad plan that has required a great investment. They think that if they abandon their product or change their approach, they're throwing away their money or time. However, their time or money has already been thrown away, and by continuously using a bad product or by following a bad plan, they are increasing their losses. For instance, let's say you buy a new vacuum. You take it home and try it. However, the filter is so small that you need to keep replacing it. Now you need to buy more filters. But the accumulated amount spent on filters will add up to more than buying a new vacuum. But you just bought this vacuum, so you feel it's necessary that you don't waste your money by throwing it away. So you decide to continue using it. The vacuum now becomes a sunk cost. You're throwing away money on filters instead of buying a new vacuum only because you feel it's a waste of money throwing away the vacuum. In addition, you're also wasting your time by continuously having to replace and purchase new filters.
Okay, in a second, I'm going to give you my sample answer. But before I do that, I highly encourage you to pause the video and give your own answer. Set a timer for 60 seconds so that you're working within the time frame of the actual TOEFL test. Okay? Do it. All right, now let's hear my sample answer. From the reading passage, a sunk cost is described as an unrecoverable spent sum. The professor further delves into this subject by giving a real-world example of a sunk cost. Before giving her example, the professor explains that most people only make the sunk cost more expensive by continuing to use the product or invest their time and effort into a bad idea. Her example is about purchasing a new but bad vacuum. The vacuum's filter is too small, so it needs replacing constantly. And this cost of additional filters adds up, and over time, this filter cost is more than what it would be to buy a new, more efficient vacuum cleaner. This example demonstrates a sunk cost. The person's making it worse by throwing away money rather than just admitting a mistake and replacing the vacuum. Therefore, this is a great example of a sunk cost. Okay, as I'm sure you noticed, in the lecture, the professor only used one example. But in our template, we've got two examples. So it's actually simpler. You don't need to worry about the transition words or giving the second reason. Just want to let you guys know that. All right, almost finished. So again, here's the rubrics table for the TOEFL's Integrated Speaking task. You can download it here. I'll put a link here on the screen and one below in the description. I've gone through this table twice already in our previous videos, so if you haven't seen them, click on the link in the description below and have a look at those. And basically for tasks 2, 3, and 4, the rubric's the same. The only difference is the topic development. And so that's what I'm going to focus on here. So for speaking task 3, the examiner expects 2 things from you. He expects you to explain the meaning of the academic term. So make sure you do a good job of defining clearly what the academic term, idea, or process is. And then you need to show the details and the examples used by the professor. If it's 1 or 2, doesn't matter, but you need to do a thorough job of explaining how those details and examples relate to the main idea. The other criteria are the same, so I won't go over those details here. Again, the link's in the description if you want to hear about it. All right, you made it. Congratulations. So in this video, we covered speaking task 3. We looked at the structure of the question. We gave you a template that you can use in your own answers. I showed you 2 sample responses. And then we went over some note-taking skills. And that's really important to really be efficient in how you take notes. And finally, of course, we finished with the rubric on how to score well. I hope you found this video useful. We have more questions. We have 55 Speaking Task 3 sample questions at our website over at www.bestmytest.com. So up next in our series is Speaking Task 4, and it's even more challenging. Why? Because there's no reading. It's just audio only. It's an integrated style, but only with audio. So make sure you stay tuned for that video. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm Dennis with BestMyTest.com. See you next time.